Hey everyone, so I posted a video and also referenced an article about the recent interview that Tucker Carlson did with Pastor ISKER. I think that's how you say it. I found some more information in a transcript that I actually copied and pasted to my Telegram page. So if you want to read word for word what they say in what I'm about to play here for you, it's actually quite revealing. So if you remember, Tucker Carlson had on John Rich, and there was this big, controversy over the denial of the rapture, and Tucker Carlson giving this guy a platform, and not giving anybody else a platform defending the rapture. Well, it turns out that my suspicions were right about this particular pastor. He's definitely believes in replacement theology. He kind of speaks out in this interview against dispensationalists and how he grew up believing the rapture and how it's kind of something, well, it's not kind of, it's something he does not believe in. It's something he preaches against. And Tucker Carlson seems to agree with him throughout this entire interview. I just find it interesting that Tucker has been inviting on people that seem to be anti-Semitic or boldly anti-Semitic, and also people that are Christians that are not dispensationalists and that seem to have a one-sided view regarding the rapture. He does make some valid points regarding people just kind of waiting around and not being busy for the Lord and doing the things of God. But I think it paints an unfair picture regarding those of us who hold to a pre-tribulational, dispensational eschatology. So I'm going to play these clips here for you to view, and I'd love to hear your comments below. God bless.
Like the book of Revelation, right? That's actually like what's going on in that book.
The much maligned book of Revelation.
Yeah, like I know you had John Rich on, last year, and he's talking about dispensationalism and things like that. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in Tennessee. I need to meet him and talk to him about this.
Did you?
I haven't. No, I have no way of getting in touch with him. Maybe after this, if you watch it. Yeah,
he's a good man.
Oh, I love. I mean, he was like the soundtrack of my youth of country music. Like he wrote all those songs, right? So on that basis alone, right? But where he's talking about like dispensationalism and what has happened in American Christianity for the last 130 years, how it's actually a novel new thing. And for me, it was like, yeah, I looked at that. I mean, I remember, growing up, and that's just everything, like Left Behind and the Rapture is coming and all of that. And
so I missed all of that.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a thing. Especially, and of course, like I'm very critical of it. But like these are the best people in America that believe it. Like the people that have like 6 Trump flags on the back of their truck.
Oh, I totally agree.
Like they also believe that, well, the rapture is coming tomorrow and we need to be ready for it. And so anytime I'm critical of it, I'm like, okay, I'm not critical of the people. Like there's not a moral defect that they believe these things.
I totally, first of all, thank you for saying that. Second, I feel what you're saying, especially with evangelicals. I look at these, greaseball preachers who I honestly, I find disgusting. And then I see the people who go to their churches and I'm like, oh, I love you. You're exactly my kind of people. Yeah. You're the most decent people in this country. You're trying your very hardest against headwinds that are so unfair. And you're doing a great job anyway. And I just love them. I really mean it. I love them. So I never want to criticize.
Ever. Yeah.
Right. Because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The theology that has been, that has shaped, their outlook. And it's understandable because like you're, especially in the midst of like serious decline, it's like, well, actually, it's sort of attractive to have this eschatology where everything is coming to an end, right? You can understand why people would eat that up. But the people that actually built America, right? The Puritans and all of the settlers of this country, you think of even like the founding generation, that theology did not exist yet. That wasn't until the middle of the 19th century that it came into being. Like they were actually optimistic, right? They viewed, right, this continent as a place for Christians to build, to grow, to have a future.
What an interesting point. Well, I've never thought of that before. So dispensationalism, for those who haven't followed it, is normally criticized and defended because of its interpretation of what biblical Israel is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a super electric topic, both
Very sensitive.
theologically and politically.
Absolutely.
And people get utterly hysterical about it and start calling you names or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that. But you're saying that the deeper problem with it is that it makes people pessimistic.
Yeah.
Can you flesh it out a little bit?
Yeah. So I think if you go your entire life believing that any minute the world is going to come to an end,
yes,
that I'm going to float up into heaven and my clothes will be here and,
yes,
and everything, we're gone. It's done. It's over. Right. Well, that takes a people that ordinarily are very low time preference, that build things for the future, that delay gratification, all of those kinds of things. And it flips it around and makes them very high time preference, where it's like, well, if the world's not going to be around tomorrow, why invest in anything
yes,
for today? And you can even see this in terms of architecture,
yes,
right? You think of the buildings that churches have, well, they're in strip malls, or they're, just, they're kind of ugly.
It's
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah. And you look at the buildings that
it's like a former pet store in the strip mall.
Yeah. And you look at the buildings that Christians had before this was the dominant theology, and they're gorgeous. They're beautiful. And there were very poor people that made them, like you said earlier.
I know.
And it's like that right there, like you see it tangibly, that, and you think about that in terms of all of life.
That is so smart. And what was the phrase you used? Low time preference?
Yeah, low time preference.
What does
so it's
that
like an
mean?
economic phrase, right? So, right, your preference in terms of time.
Please respect my ignorance.
Yes. Yes. It just means that you're going to wait longer for things. It's sort of like the marshmallow test with little kids, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where like in 5 minutes you'll get 2 marshmallows, or you can eat this one right now, right? Well, the child that says, "Oh, I'll wait, I want 2," right? Well, he's going to go on and have more success and so forth, versus the one that immediately grabs the one and eats it, right? Well, that's low time preference. It's a people that will delay gratification, who will save and invest and build things for the long term, for the future.
And for future generations.
Yes.
But so your point is that dispensationalism not only has specious theological elements, which I think very obviously it does.
Yeah.
By the way, the whole theology was like laid out in the end notes. It's not actually in the Bible.
No,
it's like interpretation in the version of the Bible.
John Nelson Darby and Cyrus Schofield, and there's, they'll claim that they're antecedents from the early church. Like, well, this guy believed in something like the rapture, and it's like, well, it's always very, like you said, specious.
That's my read as a non-theologian, but it does seem incredibly silly, but sincere. So, okay.
Yeah, people, exactly. People sincerely believe it. So
100%.
Mock them.
A lot of people I really like and respect believe it.
Yes.
So I just want to say that. But you're saying that the cost is even deeper because it changes your worldview and makes it very difficult for you to engage in the labor of, like, for example, loving people around you and building something beautiful, which are also Christian imperatives. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. And it also, so it forces you into an immediacy, right? We got to do everything right now because there isn't going to be a future. Yes. Right? There's not going to be, and I heard this all the time growing up. Well, we're not going to be around. We're going to be raptured. So why plan for the future? Why build things for the future? Why
heard that growing up?
Oh yeah. This was just everywhere in evangelicalism.
Did you grow up in that?
Yeah. I did. And I remember in college when I was first getting into more historical theology, or thinking like, what did people believe before the 19th century about things? and it's
for the first 1800 years.
Yeah. What did they act? Well, there were various different eschatological schools. Like there's all sorts of different views of how the end works. But when I first get into that, I'm thinking like, oh, I don't know if I actually believe in the rapture. And I remember being in college and in campus ministry and telling people this. I'm like, I don't know if I actually believe in that. It was like I just uttered the greatest heresy of all time. Like I could have said, I probably could have said, well, just denied the Trinity or something, right? And they would have been like, oh, well, that's interesting. But saying, I don't think there's a rapture. What? Are you serious? Right? Like that is central doctrine to many Christians. And it has this deep, emotional connection. Cause I mean, if you've grown up your entire life hearing this and it's just assumed by everybody, right? It's hard to break out of that, even though the everybody of the historic church of millions or billions of Christians, right? It's actually a tiny minority in the history of the church that has believed that. But presently, it's a majority of evangelicals.
Yeah, it seems like that theology is dying. That's just my sense, but I'd be the last to really know.
No, I think your instincts are correct. I think some of it too, especially in the latter half of the 20th century, right after, right, Israel is formalized as a state in 1948. Well, that gives like big confirmation that, okay, things are happening. Like there's an Israel in Revelation and a temple in Revelation. So it's happening, guys. So we've got 40 years, right? 1988. That's the end. Well, then that doesn't happen. And then people make all sorts of other guesses.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of that. So the idea was 1988 's the end of the world?
40 years after 1948, right? That's when the rapture is coming. That was I think there was a book like 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1988, right? And I'm sure it sold a lot of copies and then, of course, didn't happen.
Wow.
But,
Mike Dukakis lost.
Yes.
No, I mean, that's not obviously the rapture, but whatever, we'll take it.
For people in Massachusetts, maybe it was, but, yeah, it's just so interesting because like I look at it, like you look at Matthew 24, mm-hmm. right? That's the big text that people point to. And
what does it say?
Where Jesus says, well, there's going to be wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes in various places and plagues and things like that. But right before it, right, well, Jesus is in the temple and he's fighting with the chief priests and he's telling them, he's fighting with them at Passover. So thousands of people surrounding them. He's embarrassing them in the temple. And
his boldness is really shocking.